Phase one is the 10 acres, which includes the existing coastal wetland mangrove bayou, we call it, just south of the Van Wezel, down to Boulevard of the Yards. We've got our site plan is scheduled for approval by the City Commission March 8th, next month, which gives us the last approval we need to rock and roll on construction of the upland part of the park, and then finish our permit application and submit that for the Sunset Boardwalk. So this time next year we get our core permit, we open the upland part of the park, and we build the Sunset Boardwalk from the water, and that'll take another 9 to 12 months. So about 2 years or so we should have the entire 10-acre phase one open. Obviously I'm excited about the park, but I'd say maybe a close second is all of the environmental improvements that we're making as we go, and our commitment to leave this stretch of land and this stretch of our Sarasota Bay better than how we found it. We removed some of the overgrown vegetation to really showcase this amazing Victor Lundy National Register Blue Pagoda building. I'm absolutely in love with it, and it's one of the centerpieces of this historic district. 3 National Register buildings, including the city's original Chamber of Commerce building, the city's first public library, and the city's first performing arts center, which is the Municipal Auditorium. We sort of see this as our eastern gateway into the Mangrove Walk area, and so you can see we added these light bollards to make sure that this is safe at night, and really all of this was just lawn. So we've landscaped all this. We've got a little bit more work to do. And of course, anyone that wants to stroll the fountain garden, Dave, I just saw you down there, you can stroll the fountain garden and come through here and continue on down. Our team did a great job of designing the bromeliad, picking bromeliads, and doing this sort of tropical entryway into the mangrove water. We're in the midst of construction. We're building a shared dumpster enclosure for trash and recycling that will serve the Phase 1 park and some of these buildings here. This is this sort of confluence of things that are going on, the city's water line replacement, as well as the drainage improvements here. Again, this is about elevation 3.5, and to be ready for sea level rise for the next 50 years, we're ultimately going to raise this road up to probably elevation 6. But for now, we felt like opening the Phase 1 in this mangrove walk and having the road overtopped with flooding a dozen times a year was probably not the best thing. So we replaced the stormwater pipes and upgraded them, and we're going to be, we'll be able to reuse those pipes when we elevate the roadway. Yes?
You are expecting at extraordinary tides the water will be here.
Well, that's elevation 3.5. The auditorium's at 14.5. And so for Florida, that's actually a lot of, that's pretty high, at least Southwest Florida. So even with the 2 or so feet of sea level rise, looking out 50 years, it's still not gonna, tide's not gonna flood the site. Now, we're designing the western half to be resilient and floodable, and then the eastern half to be higher, on higher ground with any new structures, so that it'll be out of the flood zone. So if you park there, you'll be able to walk here and you'll cross and step right into the mangrove bayou here. Again, hopefully 6 weeks or so, we'll walk in. Everybody have shoes that can get a little dirty? Yep. Okay, great. And so this is an old coastal hammock, and this was actually the original shoreline of this property prior to the 60s, when they filled about 20 acres and created land for the Selby Library and ultimately the Selby Library, but the Van Wezel Performing Arts Center, and the western half of the property. So these Cabbage Palms, some of you may know John O'Miller, who knows about as much about Cabbage Palms as anybody.
He wrote the book.
He wrote the book, literally. John O believes that several of these big ones are over 200 years old.
Really?
So, yeah. So anyway, there's something like 150 existing Cabbage Palms and half a dozen really large live oaks. And so as you come back into this area, they're just now in the process of grading this area and getting ready for landscape. But we're going to have a series of decks that will be in the hammock area, and really throughout the year, even in the summertime, if you're in the shade of these palms and canopy trees, it's pretty nice even in the summer. What you see here is we've got this the aluminum frame that was built to accommodate the decking so that none of the wood will be in contact with the soil and it'll rot. And so they came out and they actually cut in place all of the ebony wood to fit. It's a sustainable treated hardwood or tropical wood, and they cut them in place, flipped them over, numbered them all, took them. Now they're at the sign shop and they're etching the pattern, and then they'll come back like a puzzle, screw them in. You can see the screw holes, and we'll be good to go. And we're deploying security cameras with audio, so we'll have a view of all parts of this phase one. And we're doing that sort of as a test. Nobody's done that in parks in at least Sarasota County as far as we know. And we've also got all of the lights where they're fully dimmable, so that gives us a couple of things. One, we're able to dial it up or down to get the lighting right. But the other thing it lets us do is maybe when the park's closed, let's say 10 or 11 o'clock, it goes down, maybe they're off, or maybe they dim to 10 or 20% of original. And if something's going on, the police department and possibly the security monitoring company will be able to turn a zone of them up and also say, folks, the park closed at 11, the police have been dispatched, please leave. And so we're testing that. We're going to do our best to anticipate and hope to get it right, and we'll adapt and then learn and then deploy that as we move to the rest of the site.
So this is a swing for two? Or for
Yeah, it's going to be the size of it's a 5 or 6 foot bench, and it'll be a swing for two, kind of like some of those along the Bayfront Park over the bay.
Yep, those are very popular.
Yeah, absolutely. This was all completely lawn here, and so pretty much all of the transition zones along the bayou had lawn that sloped straight down into the bayou. And so 40 times a year when the lawn got mowed, the clippings got blown into the bayou and contributed to the nitrogen issues in the bay. That of course is tidal, so it's connected to the bay. And so everywhere we put in at least a 30 to 50 foot, in many cases several 100 foot native plant buffer, so that any of the water that falls on it will go through that buffer and get filtered by the soil and the plant material. And then this is interesting here. So this is a series of bridges, and I mentioned the denitrification trench that we put in. So this is the southern end of it here. And so it goes 600 feet around and curves around the bayou. I mentioned that we're up at elevation 14.5. So a lot of the groundwater works its way this way. And so what we did, Steve Swaw worked with us, Steve, and designed the denitrification trench. We've got 3 or 4 of the stormwater pipes that are coming from the parking lots to the northeast that drain straight into the bayou, that we bring down, put them in a box, and they get diverted in 90 degrees into this trench. It's basically a 6 foot by 6 foot trench down at the groundwater, filled with a material called biochar. It looks kind of like halfway between mulch and charcoal. And that chemically neutralizes the nitrogen. And then the groundwater takes that water down into the bayou. And so that's an amazing and relatively cost-effective way for us to pre-treat a lot of that stormwater. And then of course it's got a few places where we can pull the silt out and clean it occasionally when we need to. So this is the southern end that I mentioned. So if we have a really heavy rain, it overflows a weir and actually comes out of this pipe. And we've got a little bit of that going on right now from the other night. You can see it's very gently sloping that direction by design, so that most of it seeps down into the groundwater before it goes into the bayou.
That's right.
Get around the corner, the rubber path picks up in the western second half rather that we've opened. So on the half of it that is over by the Phase 1 park and a bit over by the Van Wezel lawn, we put it on 5 inches of concrete so emergency vehicles can drive on it if need be. But back here in the hammock, it goes right on this compacted grade here, and so it's pervious, so the water will flow down through it. But we felt like it was an important trade-off, particularly as you get down to the end of Boulevard of the Arts, the access into some of those condos. There's only one way in and out, and so if there was some problem on the street, an ambulance could jump the curb and drive all the way down and access.
Wow.
So if you park in the Van Wezel lot, there'll be a new crosswalk. You can come down the stairs, or you can come down this ADA path and access the walkway. And there's a water fountain going there. I think a bench is going there. And then this is all that you can see of two very large storm structures that drain a lot of the parking lot that I was talking about. They used to drain straight into the bayou here. And there's about 3 feet of polluted silt that's throughout the bayou, about 1,500 foot long of bayou, about 3 feet of polluted silt. We're about to get our Corps permit to dredge that. Obviously where the mangroves will walk across it, of course it'll stay. But there's still some outfall pipes there, in an extreme storm event, but right here is where the trench is, and it heads this direction 300 feet each way. So it dumps in, it goes into a baffle box, which basically, it's a wall that diverts the stormwater this way. We can pop these manholes and clean out any silt and trash and whatever. And then again, if we have a significant event, it pops out of that pipe over there through that marsh. This is gonna get shell, where if you wanna just come down the stairs and hang out, you can hang out along here. So you may or may not remember, but this was all lawn from back of curb right down in the bayou. And so fertilizer, clippings, all that. But they've just planted, they got a little bit more work to do, but this is all from here, 1,000 feet to the water is Wildflower Meadow. And so we've got a variety, half a dozen different wildflower varieties. You can see them, over there. That's salvia. This is, I think, goldenrod. And we've got coreopsis, which is the state flower. And then this muley grass, which will grow up and be, sort of, grassy meadow, because wildflowers go through a cycle of looking great and then not looking so great. So, and it's a bit of a test, I'll admit, for us to just sort of see how does it look, how does it do. So you can see, here's some of our lights that are already in. We got a permit from the DEP, FDEP, to do some mangrove windowing, and so about half of the area here we've windowed it so you can see the water, but also so that you can see what's going on in there. We had some challenges with some folks that were hanging out in some areas of it, particularly by the old Gee Whiz, but also a lot of trash was in there, and so it lets us see in there, clean it out where it's appropriate. But our goal is really to trim it. I've actually had a few folks say, oh, are you going to trim the mangroves, which was great to me, and I said, no, we already did, because I really want this to feel natural, but accommodate the functional need that we have for keeping it clean and allowing views into the bayou. We want it to just feel very natural, so we're working that. And then you can see we've planted, these are green buttonwoods, but they're native, that is growing often in association with mangroves. We've sort of pulled them up the hill a little bit to kind of bring the mangrove, feeling up the hill. I think this is going to be, quite frankly, one of the best places to drop people off that have either some disabilities, or honestly drop your husband or wife off with your double stroller and the kids, and then go park and then come down the ramp there. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that the wildflowers are already doing their thing, and so I made sure to tell the landscapers on that side, if it looks like this, it's a weed, pull it out. On this side, don't touch it, because it's doing what we want it to do. This is it, and it's, again, literally about a 1/4 inch thick, and they spread it like peanut butter, exactly. And so part of the idea here was it's just a little softer on old knees like mine. And these are the benches that are going to get installed, you know, throughout.
How you enjoying it?
Good.
Isn't it great?
Amazing.
Isn't it nice?
One of the reasons we incorporated multiple flecks of color is that you probably just don't worry about it. You know, you're kind of out in a walk in nature, and I don't think it needs to look perfect. We'll certainly keep it clean. It needs a good, you know, blowing off right now. And then we kept this area lawn. This is, of course, the Van Wezel lawn. We've added the lights that you see, so it's safe at night. And then ultimately, when the new Performing Arts Center is built and the city decides what to do in terms of repurposing this, the vision is that this native plant buffer continues and probably, you know, takes in this lawn, because we'll have a new performance lawn up by the new Performing Arts Center. This Sunset Boardwalk, as it comes around, it launches from the south side, which we'll walk over to, but on the north side, it lands about in here somewhere. And then we'll sweep around and sneak through. There's a little gap in some of the mangroves we've identified, and it'll sneak across and connect you back in. So that, in combination with this, will have about between 3/4 of a mile and a mile just in this loop that goes around the bayou, which is pretty cool. We're going to completely renovate this bridge and elevate it 18 inches or so in the middle to get a little bit more headroom. The canoe kayak launch is actually back tucked behind the mangrove there, but it'll get you a little bit more headroom. Right now we're
high tide,
yeah, high-ish tide, yep, and yeah, maybe 4 feet right now. So another 18 inches will give you some extra room, so that's great. We've got, as I mentioned, about 3 feet of polluted silt that's been draining for decades off of 41 and off the parking lots. And so as soon as we get our core permit, spring or summer, we're going to demo the middle of the bridge. The barges are going to come in and start pulling out the polluted silt. We're going to pump it up to the lawn there and squeeze the water out, put the water back, and then take the polluted silt off site to a landfill. And then as soon as the barges work their way back past this point, then we're going to start rebuilding this bridge with the 18 inches of height addition. And then each of these overlooks will get etched decking. One of them, I think we decided on pink shrimp, and one of them we decided on mangrove tree crabs, which I just saw one cruising around down here. And then there'll be additional content there as well. So the other thing I wanted to point out, got a nice little school of, I think those are mullet, aren't they, Dave? Yep. And occasionally we get a barracuda hanging, trailing behind.
You have some snook come in too.
Some snook. But if you look closely, there's some round white discs that are under the water. It's hard to see at high tide here, but those are upside down jellyfish, which I had never heard of. But our environmental consultant pointed them out to us, and they're jellyfish that just live on the bottom and the whatever, tendrils or whatever you call the antenna, and they do actually have a mild sting. But our consultant also says that they are an indicator of both warmer water, but also an unhealthy benthic environment from the polluted silt and the polluted stormwater.
Some nutrients.
Yeah, some nutrients. And so they can live, but seagrass doesn't like it. So we have almost no seagrass in this entire stretch of bayou. And so once we dredge it out and restore better tidal flow, our consulting team thinks that we'll get seagrass populated all throughout here. You can see we've got some orange noodles, and that is water quality testing stations. We've got a contract with Moat to partner with us to test water quality monthly, and then quarterly they're taking benthic mud samples, and then they have an ichthyologist that's quarterly doing seining of fish and cataloging the fish. So we're establishing a baseline of what is it doing today, and then we'll see what we get after we do all these environmental improvements.
It'll be way different once they dredge it.
That's
the depth will be.
We're right in the middle of moving 3 very large live oaks. So this one, this 50-footer we already moved, and these 2 that are right in front of you, they're in the process of doing actually right now. So we repruned it about 9 months ago, and you'll see up here they burlapped them. And then let's see if they've got it set up to move, but it's fascinating how they move it. It's how I read the Egyptians built the pyramids with a series of rollers. So this is native oolite stone, and we had a little grade issue here, so we put the stone in here to transition the grade. And then it also, we've got a drain here, so as the water runs in, it goes into a pipe and then through this native plant buffer. This was all also lawn right down to the bayou, and so we planted it with natives. And then this also gives, you know, kids or grown-up kids like me something to hop on and, you know, have a little fun with. It's a native stone. Actual stone.
Yeah.
The original Selby Library had these outdoor reading rooms that you could check out a book, sit out on a covered terrace, and look out at the water. Of course, that was in the 70s before all the mangroves grew up. But this is the last remnant of that we saved, and we've temporarily put this up so that kids don't fall off the back. But this will be a deck area with, we're gonna plant an additional tree in here with shade and some educational signage about the history of the Gee Whiz and the Selby Library, and be a great place to sort of nestle in and take in what's going on in the park. But I love that we're going to celebrate the heritage of the site, which I think is really important. So here's the Sunset Boardwalk. So it will actually, it'll launch about where, just close to where she is in the purple shirt there. And go out past there's the breakwaters right there.
Yep.
It's about elevation 7 on top of the rocks there now. So it'll be consistently same height all the way around. And then we've designed it with, there's a short parallel band of seagrass that runs through here. And so hence why we've got these connector docks that'll have perforated grading. And then our consultant said 8 was a good elevation to balance, to minimize shading on the seagrass.
When we say impressive, it's not only the quality of the construction, the attention to the detail. I mean, the environmental sensitivity just absolutely is a mind blower in a positive sense. But it's also incredibly impressive, affirming to watch Bill Waddell's passion and knowledge and attention to every blade of grass and every leaf on a tree. So the Bay Park Conservancy has chosen wisely, with all of its contractors, with its plannings, and the workers. I think the workers actually think they're part of something bigger than the park.
So I hope you enjoyed the tour, and I'd just like to give a word of thanks to the amazing support of the Patterson Foundation, both financial support and brain power support. We couldn't have done it without the foundation, and we look forward to an ongoing partnership moving forward in the future to deliver an amazing Bay Park to our entire community.